Good evening. This is Maestro Cretella with a Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today, we have a 1v1 on Paletooth Gorge, a remake of Greentooth Gorge. Our first player today is none other than Maestro Cretella, playing as Sindri, Trollface, Chaos Sorcerer. He is a spell-casting hero. He's got a long-range damage spell called Doom Bolts. He can teleport a bunch. He's also got some manipulation and control spells like mind control and stuff. Next up, we've got BlessedSpartan playing as the Force Commander. Tanky melee hero, starts out with a bolt pistol and chainsword, can get a power sword, a storm shield, a thunder hammer, or a power fist. Pretty straightforward, just ties things up, disrupts melee units with battle cry. He can teleport, that's a really good thing for him. So I've been playing a lot of 1v1 lately, playing a lot of players who I've never played before, some very good players. Played Siddich, played Fat E. Here I'm playing BlessedSpartan. BlessedSpartan is a player who he's been around for a while, and I mean, I've been around for a while. I think he's new to, I think he started with Retribution. I think he's kind of like me in that sense. Not quite as experienced as some of the people who've been around playing since Chaos Rising or Vanilla. But he's been playing Retribution for a while, definitely. And he's a player he's a good player, although he's not exactly top. A good but not exactly top player, and so that also makes me think I've definitely seen a lot of his replays, cast a few of them, as well as seen his stream a bit. And I always kind of wondered, oh, how good is he? And we kind of figured out in this game, as well as a few games we played afterward, and it actually seems like we're on a pretty similar level. And it figures he's a good but not exactly top player, which is kind of how I would be described myself. But anyway, I'm going for the noisy build right here. Triple Scouts, I got Chaos Space Marines, and eventually I'm going to get a Havoc. BlessedSpartan's going for the very typical Space Marine play. He's got 2 Scouts and 1 TAC. Very, very common for Space Marines. What surprised me, I'm a little bit surprised though that BlessedSpartan actually got a very, very early shotgun purchase. He actually made that as his first purchase, so that he had it pretty much in the first engagement, and won the first engagement a lot on the power of the Shotgun Scouts. And the Shotgun Scouts, they do a huge amount of range damage up close to heretics. It actually makes them really, really good as a melee counter, and especially against weaker squads. And it really changes how you deal with melee if you upgrade Scouts to shotguns, and it really changes what Scouts can do. Because if you don't have Shotgun Scouts, you really have to do a lot of kiting and run away. It's in my opinion less efficient. It is both less efficient, less effective. It requires a lot more micro, and I feel like you also give up a lot more ground that way. So I'm generally a big proponent of Shotgun Scouts. There are definitely times when high-level players will actually forego Shotgun Scouts, and I entirely understand the reason, just because, first of all, the fact that they can save that power cost, they can be extremely evasive with their Scouts, and they know how to win engagements without them. And it's just an option that you have if you can pull it off. It's definitely harder to pull off. But I'm also just surprised to see it out of BlessedSpartan, in part because I've definitely watched a lot of replays of him, actually, and I found he would often try to do very similar to what a lot of high-level players do, which is actually try not to get the Shotgun Scouts and stick with the Vulture Scouts. And just use kiting and micro. But he may have just seen the triple heretic build and just decided immediately that he's got to respect the triple heretics. I mean, if I were playing as Space Marines against a player who had triple heretics, I would personally definitely would get Shotgun Scouts myself. It's actually a pretty brazen thing to try to fight a triple heretic build without shotgun scouts. We saw Lucidich did it against me, and he pulled it off successfully. He is also an extremely good player who's capable of pulling that off. So, anyway, I have my Chaos Space Marines capturing right here. They're on map control duty. I'm feeling a little bit of VP and resource pressure, but this might be a little bit of an insecurity on my part. I often feel a lot of like I want to make sure I'm not losing the entire map. I feel like there's so many times, especially when I'm playing against really good players, where even if I'm keeping up in engagements, I somehow seem to be losing the entire map. So I really try to make sure that I'm like capturing up on, that I'm trying to capture points. But sometimes one of the things that happens when I do that is actually that I split up my units too much. I focus too much on capturing, and then I'm not capable of winning engagements because I have all of my units isolated. Anyway, this particular use of infiltration I feel has actually been not very good. I also feel like my use of infiltration is not very strong, which is kind of bad for a Chaos player to not be very good with infiltration. I could be wrong a bit. I could be underestimating myself. I definitely know how to use it. I just feel like I'm not particularly good with it, and I feel like there are other Chaos players who are better with it. But I spent a lot of time just repositioning my Havoc and not actually achieving much with that infiltration, in part because he was just kind of moving away from it. And the Tzeentch infiltration is, of course, just one of the big things that the Sorcerer has, and it's something about him that can be extremely powerful when used correctly. But one of the surprising ways of dealing with it is actually to not fight it, like if you can. If you can find a way to basically just avoid it, go somewhere else, like a power farm, that can actually be very powerful. Because first of all, infiltration is kind of by its very nature intrinsically immobile, because heretics need to stop moving in order to worship, and there's even like an animation that takes a little bit of time to have them start worshiping, and that also slows you down. And then of course, for the Sorcerer in particular, worship is a lot about using the Havoc, and the Havoc is again a pretty very static unit. Needs to be still to actually shoot. Has setup time and all that stuff. So, and mobility is, in that sense, the mobility is not really a strength of the Sorcerer, and Chaos is typically considered a race that lacks a bit in mobility. The Chaos Lord definitely has the best of this because his worship actually compensates for that. The Sorcerer does at least have the option of getting the teleport armor as well as the Sigil of the Rift, and that can in some ways be used to improve his mobility. But at the same time, or not at the same time, but just other considerations are that certainly in the grand scheme of the Sorcerer meta, the Chains of Torment are the far more, the Robes of Torment rather, are the far more valuable armor warrior, and it's especially true in this matchup. Any matchup where you have some kind of melee unit that's really threatening, you're probably going to want the Robes of Torment, and it's probably just going to be the better choice. Anyway, I actually feel like BlessedSpartan's positioning in this particular engagement is not very strong. He's about to get his attacks Doom Blasted. Lucky to not lose a model on those attacks, though, and the Havoc should be in a position where it can suppress the Force Commander. So part of what I'm going to do here is he's going to be chasing. He was going to chase the Chaos Space Marines with the Force Commander, so I drew the Chaos Space Marines into the firing arc of the Havoc. Unfortunately, it does get jumped, and that is actually going to turn the engagement in favor of BlessedSpartan. And that's interesting because one of the biggest problems in this matchup is the Force Commander. So the main way you deal with that is with the Havoc. And the Havoc does very efficiently deal with the Force Commander. But then you also have these Assault Marines to deal with. And the Assault Marines very effectively counter the Havoc. And that usually ends up turning things in favor of, well, the Space Marine player. Now, a lot of interesting things here. We've actually got triple scouts from BlessedSpartan, And that's after he had already lost another scout. So he's really being oppressive on the map control. And we see the map is mostly red, and what isn't red is being decapped. Now I've got a Dreadnought out, and I've actually been very regularly deciding to just get Dreadnoughts against the Force Commander. And it's a tough call, considering the Force Commander with the Power Fist is one of the best walker counters in the game. But I'm getting it in part because I get some kind of extra range damage out of the Chaos Dreadnought with this autocannon right now. I basically just have a ranged DPS unit, which is something that the Sorcerer needs. Also, I have some escape mechanisms for the Dreadnought that the other Chaos heroes don't. If the Dreadnought does get hit by Flesh over Steel, I can always use the Warp Global to get it out of there. It's just a get out of jail free card that I have that the other Chaos heroes don't. And I'm actually, because I'm actually pretty practiced in this matchup, and because I'm making the conscious decision to get Chaos Dreadnoughts against a hero who's actually extremely good at countering them, I'm also usually pretty prepared with having my Sorcerer in a good position to have him warp the Dreadnought out. In other words, I make a habit of having my Dreadnought in a safe position if I need, of having my Sorcerer in a safe position if I need to teleport the Dreadnought out of there. Now, I was hoping to bash the generators a bit with the Chaos Dreadnought. Chaos Dreadnought with an autocannon, it kind of bashes at a decent rate, like not too fast, but, well, better than most other things, better than most like regular ranged units. Because it has an explosive damage weapon. However, the DPS on the autocannon isn't terribly high, and I'm backing off because I have this Space Marine Dreadnought to deal with, which is definitely something that can be very threatening. So, unfortunately, we do have a Force Commander teleporting in and tying up the Havoc, which is ultimately just one of the big threats and scary things about this matchup. Basically, that the Force Commander, again, he's already an answer to so many things in this matchup, and he does so much by himself. And the main thing that's controlling him is a Havoc, and giving him the teleporter pack actually gets him to counter the main thing that keeps him in check. So that teleporter pack is, and there's that teleport. So that teleporter pack is just, it's another thing that, to be honest, makes this matchup really, really hard. Because you're relying on, especially in Tier 1, you're relying on the Havoc to basically control the Force Commander. Now, I've even given up that control of the Force Commander with the Havoc, but I also need this Havoc to deal with the Dreadnought. And I have a Chaos Dreadnought with the Mark of Horn, which actually does have a slight advantage over the Space Marine Dreadnought. But that's only in a direct fight where the Space Marine Dreadnought is fighting the Chaos Dreadnought by itself. Otherwise, usually Space Marines have a bit of an advantage in the vehicle wars, just because, especially in a vehicle-on-vehicle war, because they have more supplemental AV coming out of the rest of their units. That's not the case with BlessedSpartan. He doesn't have a missile launcher, he doesn't have melt-a-bombs. And I actually have a Havoc, because I actually think in those terms. Like, I think in terms of, if I'm in a vehicle-on-vehicle situation, I might want something else, some more additional anti-vehicle to give my vehicle an edge. That's how I think. I don't necessarily know that that's how BlessedSpartan thinks, but it's how I think. Anyway, I use Sigil of the Rift to teleport the Devastators out of there. Just pretty typical play. If anything, I'm actually very surprised when I see good players get Devastators against a Sorcerer or any kind of setup team, really. But, so I had a nice little victory there as far as engaging, but I'm not doing very well on map control at all. I mean, BlessedSpartan does have triple scouts. He's got two that are still... No, wait. He's got all three on upgrade at this point, so now he doesn't even have that shotgun scout that he had before. So he really probably is just using them as map control. I mean, he has what he needs to fight without the scouts, and the scouts aren't going to be contributing a whole lot. So he can just have them run around as map control, pretty much. Now I'm trying to do a little map control of my own. I've also fully upgraded my Chaos Space Marines, which is really, really good, because they will... I can kind of have the Chaos Space Marines roam around, and they will just do a lot of damage to just anything they see. And they can always just back off if there's something a bit more that they can deal with. And the Chaos Space Marines also have a big variety of units they want to target. Unfortunately, I lost my backcapping squad of heretics. I lost track of them and consequently lost them. Pretty much, if the Chaos Space Marines see pretty much anything that's not a vehicle, they want to shoot at it, and they will do a lot of damage to it. Whether it's the Force Commander, the Scouts, the main thing they have to worry about are the Assault Marines, which will jump on them, but in a way that's almost good for me in some ways, and in other ways definitely not. Assault Marines definitely counter Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. But Blessed Spartan, I can tell that he's like being a little cautious about committing to an engagement at this point. And if he's not going to commit to an engagement, I can do a better job with my Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines of basically like just poking at him. I noticed Indrid's been using that word lately, and it's an interesting concept, and I have the better ability to just like poke at him, do some model damage, as well as, well, inflict some bleed by killing models, and just do damage, force things off, just by having my Chaos Space Marines stick their heads out. Anyway, I teleported the Havoc. I don't think I had the Sigil of the Rift. Unfortunately, this is a bit of an accidental play, and I don't think the way I played this off was very good at all. I teleported the Devastators out of there, but I had accidentally teleported my Havocs in at a time when I really didn't want to. I'm also, now the Warp Global is on cooldown, and I unnecessarily used the Warp Global when I could have used the Sigil of the Rift to teleport that Havoc. So, not very well played there. And probably the only reason I used the Warp Global over the Sigil of the Rift was just because it was easier. The Sigil of the Rift is slightly more micro than the Warp Global. Something about the Warp Global is just a little bit easier to use. Whereas the Sigil of the Rift, it takes a little more setting up. Fight harder. But anyway, lost my Dreadnought. I'm actually in Tier 3 while Blessed Spartan is not. Which I almost feel is a little unusual. I would more expect, especially considering the map patrol he's been having. Although at the same time, that's one of those phrases that I use a little unnecessarily that probably doesn't even mean anything. One thing that's been happening for Blessed Spartan, I think he's actually been bleeding a bit more. I think that has a lot to do with my Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines bleeding models off of Scouts, off of attacks. So I think he may have been bleeding a bit more. I'm getting a second squad of Chaos Space Marines, which may seem very interesting, but I mean, right now my Chaos Space Marines are doing pretty nicely because of the way that they can, again, just like poke at it, like I said, and the vehicle is gone, so now Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines are just going to be good at everything. Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines, there was a time when I actually personally said that Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines were overpowered, and pretty much what keeps them in check at this point are vehicles. Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines are very expensive, and investing too heavily in them leaves you vulnerable to vehicle play, and that's why it often makes sense, especially in 1v1 games, to just have one fully upgraded squad rather than to have more than one. If it weren't for vehicles, Tzeentch Chaos Space Marine spam would actually just really work out very well. Lost a model there, though, in part because we've got double shotgun scouts actually coming aggressively. So Blessed Spartan, he lost one of his scouts again, so now he's back down to 2 scouts. And he's actually got shotguns on both of them. So that will actually do a lot to make my heretics pretty irrelevant, I think. Or maybe not. Right now they do get knocked over, but it allows them to contribute to fights more, especially if they can... If the shotgun scouts can not take damage, and by that I mean if Blessed Spartan can make it so that he draws my enemy fire with something else, or if he even disrupts my Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines, the shotgun scouts will actually do a lot of damage. They can just run in, basically just have something else tank the damage while they do damage. It's actually a very good situation for them. And I've got my second squad of Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines right here. I've also got some Assault Marines in my face, bleeding models and knocking my models over. And will they kill any models on this squad of Chaos Space Marines? They actually don't, so I got a pretty close call right there. But VPs are now starting to get tight. I don't remember, but I think I may have had the VP lead, but obviously BlessedSpartan now has it. And this should actually be the end of this Las Cannon Havoc. And what I did there was pretty intentional, which is I didn't initially attack the heretics with the... I didn't initially attack the Devastator with the heretics. Instead, I used the Chaos Space Marines to whittle them down and bait them into retreating. Not just bait them into retreating, but force them into retreating, pretty much. And then I just put the heretics in their retreat path. Unfortunately, the Sorcerer went down to the Force Commander with the Power Fist. He teleported in. Definitely one of the strengths of the Force Commander with the Power Fist. He's extremely good at sniping heroes that way. Now, here's something... We're gonna get a little ahead of ourselves here, but I'm bashing generators with the Havoc. That's one of the things you can do with a Havoc after vehicles are gone. I'm doing this to get red. I'm at 341 red. I needed to bash this generator right here to get 10 more red so that I could call down Terminators. Now I have enough requisition and power to call down Terminators, but I don't have the red, and that's a really big deal because I wanted to have those Terminators for the next engagement, and now I won't. I need to actually have another engagement before I call down the Terminators. So that timing of the Assault Marines jumping on my Havocs is actually going to end up being crucial. It's going to be a little detail that's going to have a huge impact on this game. Because I'd like to have Terminators right now, and I'd like to already be upgrading them to the autocannon. Now, I want to upgrade them to the autocannon because I've committed to a mostly very anti-infantry build, and I want the versatility of that autocannon. See, like right here, I want to already have the Terminators around so that I could threaten this Predator. As it is, what's happening right now is that I need to back off because I didn't have the Terminators ready. So I needed to back off the Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines because there was nothing I could do about the Predator. And you know what? There's actually still not a whole lot I can do about the Predator. Because although I now have my Terminators, I'm in a much worse position than I would have been in if I had had them at the start of the engagement. My Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines have lost most of their health. The Chaos Predators, they're upgrading to the autocannon when I wanted them to already have the autocannon. And I'm really being overrun by the Predator. And now I finally have the autocannon, but I already took a lot of damage that engagement, bled a lot, lost a lot of models, and I also didn't even threaten that Predator as much as I could have. And this is an unupgraded Predator. So, now, I mean, I ultimately came out in that engagement kind of okay, but still just not as good as it could have been. Things could have gone a lot better for me in that engagement. So, that was just a little detail. I couldn't finish bashing this generator because my Havocs got jumped on, which meant I couldn't call down Terminators, which means I didn't have them for that engagement, which means I couldn't have the autocannon, and they couldn't actually threaten the Predators. So that's so many little details, and it's amazing how, like, when you play, especially if you play 1v1, and you play it at a pretty good level, and we're both pretty good players, but not exactly top, but this is still some serious shit here. Just that little detail really made a huge difference, and to be honest, it won't be the only little detail that's going to make a huge difference in this game. Now I'm setting myself up in a defensive position. Now here's that other little detail. I used the Chains of Torment at the start of that engagement, and it got shot down immediately. So what's critical about that is that it means my Chains of Torment are now on cooldown, and I can't use it for about another minute. I actually don't remember the exact cooldown, but I believe it's about a minute. And now what we have is a Terminator call-in. Now I'm going to subjugate the Terminators, and I'm actually moving them closer. I burn the teleport, but I put them too close to my stuff without realizing that Chains of Torment is on cooldown, and I've actually put those Terminators in a bad position where they're now overrunning my stuff, and they're killing these Chaos Space Marine models. Those Chaos Space Marines did not have a lot of health, and I'm also taking more damage from the plasma attacks. And the Terminators are actually overrunning me when my intention was to set them up to get wiped. Set them up with burning the teleport with Tome of Subjugation and then using the Chains of Torment. Chains of Torment finally comes off cooldown, but it's way too late at this point. I lost a bunch of models on all of my squads. Yeah. And now I can't deal with the Terminators. So unfortunately, that was just an unfortunate consequence of just me using an ability at a wrong time when I didn't really need it, and then I didn't have it when I really did need it. Now I've got the VP lead 73 to 20, but I'm running out of things that can fight, and I'm running out of time. There's still 3 models on this Terminator squad. I think my teleport is on cooldown for the Terminators, but I'm getting desperate to just get out of there because I feel like if he gets the triple cap, that's probably going to be it. But as it is, I'm about to lose all of my squads. So that's also pretty much it too. He's about to get the triple cap. And I'll tell you right now, that's the game in his favor. If you couldn't already guess it. But unfortunately, just some things in that last engagement. And like my original use of chains, it really didn't do that much at all. It got shot down immediately and then did nothing. So I really misused chains, and then it was on cooldown, didn't have it when I needed it. So I just had 2 mistakes. Now, I mean, that first mistake that I talked about, or just the first, not even a mistake, just the way things happened, where I couldn't finish off this one generator, that probably didn't have as big of an impact, but that was still something, that was still huge, to be honest. It was still huge, even though I was still in the game at that point. And then that last mistake, that one ended up costing me the game. But alright. That is it. Hope you enjoyed the cast. Have a good night.